Hi, and thank you for joining us for this Day of Empathy sponsored by Dream Corps Justice. My name is Brandolyn Parks. I'm the founder of Kansas Coalition for Sentence and Prison Reform. Today we have with us three professionals that work here in Kansas, Ms. Kelly Grant, Electra Knowles, and Alicia Dwarick. And we're going to discuss how empathy affects incarceration. Is there enough of it? Is there not enough of it? And just some of the issues going on within the Kansas prison systems, good and bad. And so to get started, Kelly, if you had to rate the Kansas penal system today on a scale of A through F, what rating would you give it and why?
Well, I would probably go ahead and give them a low C for the efforts that are being put in. I think that it's important for us to remember that every system is working in a bigger system, and a lot of times we are doing the things that we agree upon on social contracts. So, as a society, we've said this is what we want to see, and then our systems carry that kind of stuff out. So we've been through multiple iterations of how we should do the penal system over and over. We've had 2, 3, 4, we're in the fourth era of punishment, and that is the crime control punishment. So we as a society have said we want this kind of treatment and this kind of system in place, and that might be changing pretty soon. Like, we've been in that era for, well, since 1960, basically. And I see and think there are some things changing about how we want to do our entire criminal justice system. So, I would probably give them a C- based on the fact that as a society, this is what we've said we want. And, also a little bit of a lower than average grade, because I think there are lots of things we could do better.
Great. Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about your education on the criminal justice system, where that comes from, and what work you've done within the Kansas Department of Corrections?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty varied. I've been in and around the system for 23 years, and that's the criminal justice system as a whole. I am in the final stages of my doctorate. I've worked for a local Department of Corrections at the county level, but I've also worked as a liaison between the prison system and the mental health system. And then in the last several years, I serve on boards related to prison work and advisory boards. So I, in the last several years, through research, have been inside to, do research within the system and kind of see what the issues are, what's going on in there. We've done surveys, we've done things like that in agreement with KDOC. So I've been in and around the system for a long time.
Thank you so much. And Electra, I would like to ask you the same question. If you could rate the Kansas penal system today on a scale of A through F, what rating would you give and why? And also let us know what you have done, what education you have regarding the Kansas prison system and the work that you've done within.
So I don't want to piggyback off of Kelly, but I do believe that we're sitting somewhere in the mid to lower range on a scale of A to F. When it comes, I'm sure, our later questions will get more into empathy, because that is today's topic. For what we're doing with the penal system, I think the biggest problem with our penal system is nobody really wants to pay attention to it. I think that when it comes to our social issues and the things that we pay attention to in our society, we pay attention to a lot of different things. We put corrections and criminal justice on the back burner because we're warehousing them so we don't have to worry about them. In the Kansas Department of Corrections, I believe that we try to implement everything that is told to us that is appropriate, but when it doesn't work, we don't have the funding to scramble and fix it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we have people that have really good ideas and thoughts, and they want to implement good things, But at the end of the day, if we don't have the funding, we don't have the attention to do so, we're still going to sit at a C or D on a scale of A to F. My experience in the Department of Corrections is all internal. I worked in facility work. I also, when it comes to just criminal justice departments, have worked for local law enforcement also. I was unit team, all the way up to unit team manager. I did crisis resolution work, and I have an education in criminal justice and security management, and I also have my master's of science and leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. I totally agree. And being on the other side, I haven't worked in the system myself. Believe it or not, I agree. I think we're around a C or a D right now. I think that there are some things that I see KDOC trying to make positive changes, but as long as those changes remain on paper, they're just changes on paper. They're not actually being implemented. So I'd have to agree with you on that. Now, Alicia, you are a Washburn Law student, undergrad. Law studies. Okay, thank you. And I know that you're also an advocate, and you've been studying as well for the past few years on criminal justice reform. And so recently we talked about some of the programs that exist within the Kansas Department of Corrections for people upon reentry. How do you feel about the programs that you've learned about thus far?
I think they're weak. I would like to see more. One thing that initially made me angry when I read it was the emphasis on being a good tenant. But now I see the value in that, because if you've been in prison for 20 years and you're about to be released, that would be good information to have. But ideally, I would like to get government out of rehabilitation because it's not working. We have a national failure rate of 67% recidivism. And here in Kansas, it's 38%. But if participants are involved with the Reaching Out from Nonprofit program that's geared towards self-help, that drops drastically to 4 to 8%. And then also another thing that gets me fired up is that drug dealers are natural entrepreneurs. So I would like to foster that raw talent with different programs. So I don't think we need the government involved. It's obvious that individuals care more than, well, I don't want to say a bureaucrat checking boxes because of these lovely ladies, but just that's my intent. I think we could do better if we put it in the hands of the individuals and nonprofit programs.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I would like to ask all three of you, including myself would be four. In your professional opinion, is there an understanding of the need for human empathy within the Kansas Department of Corrections? Like, do the people who work in the Kansas Department of Corrections know the difference between empathy and sympathy? And are they applying empathy in their daily activities? And we'll start with you, Electra.
I'm glad you started with me. I think that we try to teach it. So I taught a lot to staff members and offenders when I worked for the Department of Corrections. We try to teach it. That is something that's very hard to teach. I think that's something that is more learned in your upbringing, and sometimes it's even learned in your experiences. One thing that a lot of people know about me is my father was incarcerated in a different state, not in Kansas, and I learned empathy a different way. I cried when I'd have to leave him, or I cried when I would think about him sitting there day after day after, you put yourself in a different perspective. That's hard to teach. And I go back to saying, sometimes we just do the best we can. I agree when they say the Department of Corrections is failing the penal system, or the penal system is failing, or rehabilitation is not working. That's true. But to teach empathy is really hard. And I gave, a lot of people in the Department of Corrections, they have it. They just have it. And I really think it's almost something that goes along with your traits or your ethics. I hate to say ethics, because you can be a really good person and not know how to empathize. So I just think it's one of those things that we could do better on as a society, not just the Department of Corrections, but it is one of those things until we really pinpoint how to teach it. That is a hard one.
Yeah. And Kelly, how do you feel about this as well?
Well, I have not worked inside as a worker. It's my experience, having been around systems for a long time, that most people are well-meaning and that there are constraints but placed on them through environment, policy, a variety of different things. I think there's a whole ball of wax here as to why we may not have the levels of empathy. And one thing I know is a huge struggle in the Department of Corrections and all human service industry, or it's not industry, but all human service activities, is the inability to pay a wage that matches the level of work and things that people are required to do in these situations. And so for a lot of times, then when you can't pay a wage that matches the level of work, we start seeing that people are just coming and checking the box, right? Well, that's the rules. That's just like, I'm just here to get my paycheck. And I'm not saying that everyone does that. I think, though, we do know there's a huge turnover rate. Attrition is really bad in Department of Correction, especially for the entry level workers. And so I think that there's a lot that contributes to a lack of empathy. And I'm not sure that it's this malicious intent that people show up and are like, I'm just going to make these people's lives terrible. But I do think that it's systemic, that this is just what we're doing. And when people try to question things or they try to change the system, they're going up against something that they can't make a lot of movement with as an individual. So I think that we could definitely increase the levels of empathy. I think we could get the right people into the prisons to do the right kind of work. As far as rehabilitation and things like that, I think it's possible. But I think that right now we're just a system of pushing people through, and just like they're so overwhelmed with how many people and lack of funding and all these things, that it's kind of like, well, why would I put my heart into this job or this role if, for what, And I do think it's a certain kind of person, and I think we can teach it. I just think that it requires a lot of awareness and like helping people unpack their own stuff and getting rid of some of that in order to be able to connect with people who are incarcerated. And with my situation, just to quickly say, I, like Electra, my dad wasn't incarcerated, but my kid's dad was incarcerated. So, and I was not with him, but I navigated maintaining relationship and maintaining, like connection between him and his sons. And so I have had that experience on the other side of things too. And it did create a lot of empathy for me.
That's great. Thank you. And Alicia, I'll ask you the same thing. Do you feel as though there's a need for human empathy within the Kansas prison system, or even higher up, maybe at the legislative level?
Definitely. A need for empathy at the legislative level. Yes. When I was a legislative intern, I attended all the criminal justice reform committees. And during one of the sessions, a representative said that only 30% of our incarcerated posed a true threat to society and needed to be regulated. And the district attorney that was testifying agreed with him. After that conversation, we spent $9 million to ship 120 incarcerated to Arizona because of our overcrowded system. Also in that same time frame, there was a bill that would have made all marijuana possession offenses a misdemeanor and release 3 of the people that we currently have incarcerated for their 3rd pot possession offense. That failed. So I don't think we're with solutions. So, and when they voted to do away with our right to a speedy trial, did you try? Like, instead of, I think the solution for our legislators is just to feed the system and keep incarcerating people instead of looking for solutions. And I don't know how to, we need to humanize our incarcerated, because they're real people that are beautiful and wonderful and are capable of great things. They're not we shouldn't just be tossing people away because they made a mistake.
Yes, I completely agree. And we have four very unique perspectives. My husband is currently incarcerated, and I have been dealing with the system or helping him try to navigate the system since 2009. And we have, from a perspective of someone that's closer to actually being on the inside, it's roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And for us, the fact that it's written in policy, it says that it's supposed to happen this way, and then it just doesn't, and there's no explanation. There is no forward movement after 28 years worth of incarceration, and it appears as though nobody cares, that there's no forward movement. It's very disheartening. One example is after 28 years worth of incarceration, he was told by his unit team manager that he did not qualify for work release to prepare him to reintegrate into society because he had saved too much money and that he needed to give someone else a chance. So that's not how the system is written. There was no empathy there, and empathy means to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And in putting yourself in his shoes, here's a grown man trying to come back out into the system or back out into society who hasn't been here since he was 18 years old, asking to slowly reintegrate back in so that he can be successful. And because he did a good thing by saving money, then he's being penalized and not allowed to have that. So if his unit team had had empathy and looked at it from his perspective, I'm sure she would have agreed. But looking at it from her own perspective, oh, well, he doesn't need money, so he doesn't need work release. And I think, in my opinion, that's just one area where I think that empathy could be applied. So I definitely think that there needs to be a lot more empathy in the Department of Corrections, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and not judging them for what they've done, but pouring life into where they can go, I think is very important. Finding people where they are and bringing them up to where you want them to be is very important. So do you believe that we could both lower the incarceration rate and reduce recidivism by incorporating more empathy into the system and into the community? And what would that look like?
One thing I get excited about is I want to alleviate economic barriers to flourishing, which is important for our formerly incarcerated. Right now in America, we need government permission for 30% of the jobs. With occupational licensing, for the formerly incarcerated, it's worse, and they have to navigate an additional 45,000 restrictions on employment and housing. And that's averaging $484,000 in less income for the formerly incarcerated as a result of that. So I want to get rid of those barriers.
And I'm the one dealing with pain. I wish I never hurt you. I wish that I could take it all back. If I could, I would. Now that I'm dealing with some hurt too, I wish I never hurt you. And now that I got tears in my eyes, I wish I never made you cry. Now that I'm dealing with some hurt too, I wish I never hurt you. And now that I got tears in my eyes, I wish I never made you cry. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, I'm forced to look at it from your point of view. I got something I want to say to you. I apologize for playing a part in your son's death. While he was taking his last breath, I was taking my first steps into this penitentiary, a place of lost souls, human beings restrained in shackles and chains. It's hard to escape the pain when you dealing with blame. I bury my face in my hands, man, feeling ashamed. They tell me, don't worry, everything will be alright. But they don't know what it's like when you unable to sleep at night. When you fight to face another day, I wish that I could find a way to get away. I never will be happy in this place. It's a taste of my own medicine. I reap what I sowed. And the pain that I put you through, I'm feeling it tenfold. My nights are hella cold and my days are long. If life was a game, then I played it wrong. Penalty after penalty, a life sentence is the penalty they forcing me to pay. Hope you feel me when I say now the tables have turned. It's burning me deep, so deep I toss and turn in my sleep. Now that I'm dealing with some hurt too, I wish I never hurt you. And now that I got tears in my eyes, I wish I never made you cry. Now that I'm dealing with some hurt too, I wish I never hurt you. And now that I got tears in my eyes, I wish I never made you cry. It ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun and them slugs is hitting you. Can you forgive me for what I did to you? It seemed like a lifetime ago. I was young and reckless, and if you wasn't repping this, you couldn't tell me about this. Bullets flying through houses, hitting tables and couches. Little kids catching strays. No child should have to suffer the death. A bullet's hitting them in their head, her little body painted red. And we pretend to be the victims instead of considering the feelings of the ones who love that child, or the mother and father who used to kiss and hug that child, who watched that child grow, then watch that child go 6 feet into the dirt, man, that gotta hurt. For what it's worth, I apologize on behalf of black males in packed jails who feel genuinely bad. We living in bad conditions, half in prison, the other half in graves. The remaining few don't know how to behave. For the ones who do, I apologize to you for further tainting our image. It's like changes off limits for us. We adopted the ways of the devil, then took it to another level. Self-destruction, I sit alone in my cell by myself discussing my problems with God, and I tell him that I'm feeling disgusted. He tell me it's part of his plan and for me to trust it, but his family shedding tears and they demanding justice. I wish that I could have that day back, March 22nd, 1995, and maybe that man would still be alive, and my big brother would still be free. Not to mention the pain I caused my mother and father. Some people say, why bother live? But now that I'm a father with kids, I understand that it's a way that life gotta be lived. I gotta give you my condolences. I'm holding this pain heavy in my heart for all the lies I tore apart. Now I'm dealing with some hurt too. I wish I never hurt you. And now that I got tears in my eyes, I wish I never made you cry. Now that I'm dealing with some hurt too, I wish I never hurt you. And now that I got tears in my eyes, I wish I never made you cry. I wish that I could take it all back. If I could, I would. Believe me, it's true. I know it can't be easy for you, but what else can I do? I stand accused and found guilty. I know right now somebody feeling me. We don't think about the pain till the pain is ours. We don't think about life until it's life behind bars. I never gave death a thought till I was dead to the world. I never thought about his kids till I was missing my baby girl. In this crazy world, I learned that life is priceless. For the last 10 years, it's been crisis after crisis. Crisis my savior, but my behavior would make you think otherwise. I wish I never made you cry. Now that my eyes overflow like rivers and seas, tell me, can you forgive me? I apologize. I wish I never hurt you.
We have with us today 5 other family members that are here to discuss the effects of incarceration on the families, as well as the need for empathy within the system. We have with us Catherine Burcham, Australia Forsty, Trish Gaston, Audrey Lewis, and Julie Bodkins. Thank you everybody for being here today. I'm excited to have this talk with everyone. So we're just going to have a general conversation about the effects of incarceration on your loved one and the need for empathy within the system. We'll start with Trish. Trish, how are you today?
Doing good. How are you?
I am good, thank you. What would you like a person who has never dealt with incarceration before to understand. Like if you were having a conversation with somebody in a grocery store and you guys had to talk about incarceration and how it's affected you, what would you tell them?
Well, I think from going through all this and, having friends that have never experienced this and sharing it with them, just letting them know how hard of a time that we have and that we're there for them and that everybody makes them feel less than. And I do think that me sharing with them, they think that I don't know, their tax money pays for everything. And when I share with them about how much that we pay for them for our phone calls, let alone, if they're somewhere when we could visit, going to visit them and see them. So the amount of money that we spend for our loved ones. And I think they don't understand all of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we all know that most of them refuse to go to chow because the food is marked not fit for human consumption.
Exactly. So then we spend all that money for their commissary to make sure that they can eat
and union supply
at the
Right.
union supply. And like I said, and I know they all want to go, well, they don't deserve a TV. And so I'm like, well, I bought that TV. You didn't buy that TV.
Mhm.
Are there music or something?
Yeah.
So I just thinking, and like I said, it's been great for my friends that totally didn't understand that. And the people that I'm around now go, wow, we never thought of it like that. And just making sure that people know that, they're human beings and they do deserve, normal things in life, healthy meals, communication with their loved ones, simple things in life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Catherine, I would have to ask you the same question. What would you want your neighbor to know about incarceration if they've never had to deal with incarceration? What are some of the harder things that you have had to deal with that you would like for them to understand?
I would like them to understand that, they're very lonely inside. And even just a phone call or writing a letter, I mean, it doesn't take much time. It does take money in some respects, but it means all the world to the inmates that are inside. And sometimes they think, well, you're spending too much money or things like that. And I say no, because if I can talk to them once a day or every few days, I mean, they need me there to be the person. I'm pretty much the only person they have.
Right. Do you think that your loved one has more hope for tomorrow and for the future whenever they do receive those letters?
Yes, I do.
And it contributes to his mental well-being?
And the letters contribute, and then also I send pictures, and sometimes they ask for pictures from back in the day, and it just gives them hope of what was there to what they can,
What they
what
can come.
someday they'll come out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Even while we're struggling financially to keep them fed and clothed and basically all the things that the community believes are provided for free that we actually provide. One of the free things we can provide is hope. And I think that by us teaching and interacting with them on what that looks like, because I think whenever they go in, they lose their definition of hope. What does that even look like on a long prison sentence? Audrey, that might be something that you can expand on as well in breathing hope into a system that really doesn't seem to have any hope.
Hope is a magical word. It really is. My mate and I, our hope comes first from God. We have a faith, we share that. And then hope comes with, our sentence is long, where he's right now, the system has him as never coming home. So how do you find hope in that? But we found hope through helping other people. He is brilliant. His IQ is off the chart. They've studied him. He's a mastermind. And what he does to help people, he's worked with the mental health unit. He's worked with in fact, right now his cellie is at a disadvantage. He has mental disabilities, and Damien has taught him how to shower, how to fold his clothes, how to, take care of himself. And so hope comes in many different things that the outside world doesn't understand. It's hope is helping other people cope with this sentence. Don't let this define you. Don't let this be the end. Don't let them label you. Don't let them tell you that this is who you are,
Right. Yeah.
And so hope comes from building other people up and from giving them faith.
Yeah. And I think that you hit a major point there. Whenever it comes to coping in general, a lot of the people that come into prison didn't have the coping skills to survive out in the community. And that's kind of what landed them in prison in the first place. And so I think that helping them learn what coping looks like without drugs and alcohol, without running in the streets, without whatever it is that landed them in there. We are at the end of our sentence, hopefully. Mine comes up for parole in June of 2022. And right now, he's been incarcerated for 28 years, and he's made it to minimum, and he's on fire to move forward, right? But it's just roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And so we sat down, and he's so used to fighting to get what he needs. They're all so used to file a grievance, because that's the only way that KDOC responds to what they need. They're not even asking for fancy things or, any kind of treatment. They're asking for what's already written in the policy.
Yeah, they're not asking for exceptional behavior. They're asking for what is normal.
Right. And that's part of whenever we talk about people, power, and policy, the implementation of the policy that already exists would change the prison system in itself. I mean, it would completely transform the way things work if people actually did what's in the book. But I was working with him, and I said, let's not grieve this one. Let's talk. Let's try to appeal to their humanity first, because he has to, whenever he does reintegrate into society, you can't beat everything with a stick. You have to be able to, work through things like you and I do whenever we're out here, and be kind and speak. And he's never unkind, but he speaks lawyer. I don't know if anybody knows what that looks like, but
they could teach them the life skills like you're talking about, because they don't teach any of that.
No. And
that's what they need to know.
They absolutely do. And for anybody that is doing a large amount of time, and they give you tenant responsibility classes 5 years before you're released, and that class in itself is 8 hours long. I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mindset of release right now. I'm survival mode. They are in survival mode. And then, so you have 5 years till you get out. Well, you don't remember how to do a budget or, but if they put those classes into the last month, let's get you pumped up and get you ready to go out, just like you would your football team or your basketball team or your children when you're releasing them out to college. You give them the skills that are going to be fresh on their mind to roll them out to be successful. And so, I agree. Estrella, as we're talking about those things, what is one skill that you would like for your loved one or anybody coming out of prison to receive prior to them coming out into the community?
I know that my fiance has a plan in mind. He has a business that he wants to run. I would like for somebody to get with him and figure out what his goals would be, and then maybe teach him things that he's going to need to know to be able to run that business. Like, okay, well, this
job
is the kind
skills.
of bookkeeping you're going to need. This is maybe if you're going to need this kind of insurance. Like, give him all that he needs to know so that he knows what he's got to work for once he gets out.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with you. Entrepreneurship is really important to teach them, especially with the struggle of finding a job whenever you come home, and finding a job that pays you whenever you come home. You might be able to get a job at McDonald's flipping burgers, but that's not going to cover the cost of your fines, your restitution, your parole or probation officer, your back child support, your rent, all these things that they got to pay. I can't work at McDonald's and survive, let alone somebody coming out. And so that sets them up for failure. And then they panic. What do? I only made $150 this week. Well, I know that I can go and sell a bag of dope. And you know, I might just do it this one time, and then that one time turns into another time. And then before you know it, they're right back into the system.
We have to break down these walls. We have to break down this us against them mentality.
Our loved ones aren't being treated as people. They're being treated as a commodity. It's legalized slavery.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
If they paid a janitor, to come in and clean up feces and, you know, all of the things that my mate cleans up, you know, janitors would not be paid 20 cents a day, you know?
Yeah.
It is modern slavery. That's what it is.
That price has not raised. It's my understanding that price has not raised for them since the 90s, even though, you know, a gallon of milk is now $5 when it used to be $1.50. And the prices still go up on canteen. They still go up on everything else. The price of stamps have went up, the things that they have to buy. So if you have $22 to buy your deodorant, your you know, your grooming supplies, your stamps to mail your family, and maybe a phone call, that costs $10 an hour, to spread over multiple family members in a month, because you have more than just one family member out there. Julie, in your opinion, how can we as a community gain empathy for the incarcerated and the families of the incarcerated?
All boils down to education. I think the community has to educate themselves on as far as what's going on in the prison. They have to educate themselves as far as things that are going on so they don't treat us as bad. You know, we get shamed out here, even without KDOC. Most of us have learned a long time ago, we don't talk about our incarcerated loved ones. We don't mention it to certain people because of the shame we get without committing a crime. Just like when we go into the prison and we are treated like we did a crime. When people educate themselves and they realize that 11% of the prison population are innocent people that have been exonerated or that have taken plea bargains because they didn't have a choice besides doing life in prison or taking a plea bargain. When we realize that 46.6% of the population in prison is drug offenses, non-violent drug offenses, and a very small portion is violent offenders. So when I think somebody looks at that, instead of thinking everybody behind the prison walls is a monster that needs to stay there, I think that opens the doors for empathy so that we can understand better what they're going through, what the families are going through, to realize that most of us are mothers, daughters, nieces, wives, sisters. We love these people because they are our blood, they are our family, and we didn't commit these crimes, but we get punished as well. We do time just with them.
Being convicted of a violent crime does not make you a violent person.
Absolutely.
Being convicted of a nonviolent crime does not make you a nonviolent person. And only 1% of those released that were convicted of a violent crime actually go back to prison. 1%. And so that's just phenomenal.
That's why we're here today. We're saying we must have empathy. As you age and you're mature and you learn new things about life, doesn't mean you would make the same decision today that you made 20 years ago.
I think that they know that these people are no longer a risk to society, but the laws that we have created, as well as the mindset of the overall community. If you watch, every time that someone is released on parole, there's a big thing in the newspaper. This person committed all these crimes, and KDOC has released him. And then there's an outcry from the community that doesn't know this person. Doesn't know the story, doesn't know exactly what happened, but now the community is angry because the prison has released someone that they're afraid of. And fear in itself is false evidence appearing real. And I think Julie hit the nail on the head about education and educating yourself and learning, because if we want to be better humans and we want to better our surroundings and make a better life for our children and grandchildren, this old school thinking it's got to go away. I found out recently by working with a lot of the KDO staff and asking them myself, hey, why are you guys so straight-faced and so stone-faced all the time? Well, they get punished if they show any emotion.
Have you ever loved someone and worried so much about them that you didn't sleep all night long?
Yeah.
You worried, you know? If your loved one was in the same situation, what would you do? Would you be okay to sleep at night wondering if someone was going to enter their cell and kill them?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
How would you feel?
Yeah.
You know?
Australia, do you think that there's empathy in the prison system in Kansas?
No.
No.
It's no, the mentality that I observed when I would go to visit is that the people that were the guards that were in the visitation room were more interested in chatting with each other about what they were going to do after their shifts than really working with any of the people. And they were just there to collect a paycheck. And I can only imagine that that's even worse when we're not watching them.
Right.
They're not in the eye of the public. They're just like, and I don't think that people who take KDOC jobs are in it because they really want to just reform criminals.
Yeah.
I think they see it as an opportunity to make a paycheck, and who cares about these people? They're just
criminals. They're prisoners.
They're
offenders.
They don't matter. So I would love to say that we never did video visits before because we were able to visit.
Right.
And we visited a lot. So this has really opened my eyes because those monitors, you get to see these guards in there with them. And, you know, I just finally had to ask because there's a lot of yelling, a lot of yelling going on.
And no mask.
And no mask. Yeah, we'll talk about the no mask. That's, you know, and definitely none of that. But I was like, finally one day, you know, I asked my loved one, I was like, did they ever, because the lady just came on. And I mean, all you heard was every day is screaming, screaming, screaming. And I'm like, does anybody ever walk in and go, because I know, I mean, they have to follow, you know, their protocol, which is fine, you know, but be consistent. Have you ever walked in and just said, hey, good afternoon. How's everybody doing today? And they both, I have two in the system, and they laughed at me and they were like, no, they don't do that. And that makes my heart so sad to think that someone would come in their job so angry and do nothing but yell at everybody. I don't like to be yelled at. And how would that make anybody else feel like they're less than?
Yeah.
If they were really there to reform them and teach them, that's not going to do it. That would be like my 11-year-old daughter's teacher coming into class and just barking orders at them all the time.
Yeah.
Who would want to be in that? So what are you going to want to learn from that person? Nothing.
Right. Yes.
This is the kind of people that our family is dealing with.
Who is training these people? Who trained that these people are human beings? And I know my kids do tell me that, Mom, you want to act like everybody's going to be nice. That there are people out there that are going to, no matter how nice the person in that walks in is, they're going to be yelled at. I go, but that doesn't mean I deal with that out in my job every day. I don't yell at everybody.
Yeah. I can tell you a story. There was an instance at El Dorado last year with the jiggly door, and the door handles jiggled. And the people, whenever the people up in the bubble wouldn't respond to the incarcerated on the floor, they would jiggle the door to get that person's attention, because the person in the bubble, the CO in the bubble, wouldn't pay attention. And so it became a thing, and all of the incarcerated was jiggling the door to get their attention. Well, they started getting write-ups and DRs for this because there's a noise ordinance. All of a sudden there's a noise ordinance. So then time goes by, we're on the phone, and I'm talking to mine, and the CO comes in and jiggles the door and starts laughing, and the person in the bubble looks down there real fast like he's about to jump on somebody for jiggling that door, and they both start laughing. He was like, it was me this time, ha. And we were just appalled because DRs affect people's lives. Julie, do you think that there's a way that the community can help implement change in our prison systems?
Well, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? So
Mhm.
if we're not dealing with somebody incarcerated all the time, we don't fully understand. So therefore, it comes back to education. And the more you're educated about it, the more you start to feel. And the more you start to feel, the more you want to help and you realize this is wrong. And hey, God calls us to be better human beings in this.
Yes.
And these people, when you put a person and you treat them worse than we treat our animals out here, they're going to come back into society with that same mentality, like a rabid dog. If we treat them like human beings and teach them coping skills, they'll come out. But that can't start until people start understanding what's truly going on and
Yeah.
educate themselves before they open their mouths and give their opinions that they should all just suffer. They need to really understand what's going on. And when
Yes.
people out here fully understand what's going on, they will start implementing change on their own, just like the rest of us have. Because none of us started out just one day, oh, my uncle's or my aunt or my sister's in prison and I'm going to do prison reform. It
Right.
doesn't work that way. This comes
Right.
from years of seeing them suffer. No blankets in their cells when they're sick, no
Yeah.
medicine, maggots in their food, things
Yeah.
like that we wouldn't know if we weren't close to the situation. And the
Right.
more we are hurt, the more we want to help. And it goes the same with the community.
Yeah.
And until the community is really brought to truth, they will not implement change.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I think when speaking about reform and transformation of the prison system, just like you said, it's not like we didn't all try all these other avenues first before we said, I am jumping on the reform bandwagon because this is just unreal.
You know, we're paying exorbitant amounts of money to communicate with our loved ones. And while they're on the inside, you know, the unit team leader on A3 at Lansing told my loved one after our third missed video visit, because the monitors were down, look, why are you bitching? They're free. Okay.
Well, and
That is not, you know, Zamuta's new
mission
technology,
statement. No.
our mission
No.
statement, you know?
No, it's not. And then whenever we talk about communication, it's not like, hey, you're calling your friend. How are you today? I mean, that's there sometimes, but most of the time it's, are you alive? Is anybody threatening your life? Were you able to eat today? Do you need anything? Have you been able to move through the system? That's the communication, whether it's through an email or a phone call or a video visit. You need to know, how can I help you? Because the system isn't.
Yes.
Whenever we speak about unit teams and you go through and you read the job description of a unit team and what they're supposed to do, they're supposed to be the mentor between KDOC and the incarcerated. They're supposed to guide them. They're supposed to go over their program plans. They're supposed to call them in and have face-to-face reviews every month. We don't have face-to-face reviews. They slide a piece of paper under your door. They have one unit team for 250 men or women, and they don't know them from somebody in New York. You know, they have no idea, but these same unit teams go and speak at parole board reviews on whether they believe that, yes, they should or they should not be released. And the unit teams have less involvement with the incarcerated than anybody there, and they're supposed to be the most involved.
They don't care.
I think that that's why we have to weave empathy into the system. That's why this day of empathy across the United States is so important.
We must change this mentality.
The people that work within the system that are related to each other too. So if you have somebody over here in point A and somebody over here at point B, and then they go home and they talk about it, and then, well, I don't like him, so now, you know, they're screwed too. So Estrella, have you come across anyone in your experience while you have been dealing with your loved one's incarceration that has helped, that has been a positive light during his incarceration?
In the KDOC?
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
None, not one.
Not at all. No,
Have any of you come across anybody that
Yes.
you have? Okay.
Yes. Elliot in the SAP program at Lansing. And, you know, there's one guard in Lansing who has been phenomenal. Now, I'm going to give Raby his points. I'm going to give him his kudos because he has done things for us that he has not done for other people. And what we need to do as a group is to put our governor on spot. You know?
Yeah. Well,
she runs the whole show.
right. And I think that you're right. Governor Kelly did run on a criminal justice reform platform during her campaign. Yes. I know that she has had a lot of pushback from legislature, some Democrats, some Republican, but right now she has a stack of clemencies on her desk. She can sign them at any moment, and nobody is being set free, and she's getting ready to run again. And I think we need to remember that in this next upcoming election, that if they are not about reform or transforming the prisons, if they're not about pushing past and making the things happen, and that doesn't just go for the governor, in my opinion, that goes for every single legislature sitting in a seat. Because they have to stop working for their political career and start working for the people. And so I think that the more we speak out and the more that we interact with the community and get more people on board to change the people that are in those seats not doing anything or just voting present, or they're too afraid to push the red or the green button, get them out of there. Let's get some new people. Legislator in Kansas doesn't get paid a lot of money. That's what I've been told repeatedly, but I know they make more money than I do. They make more money than the person coming out of prison working at McDonald's. They make more money than the mom working 3 jobs, trying to take care of their child that's incarcerated, as well as the ones that are, school age. So they signed up for that. They signed up to hear us. And it's not about what they agree or disagree with. It's more so about what we want, because we pay their salary, just like we pay the KDOC salary, the civil servants, just like we pay the United States Postal Service, like we pay the police department, and so that's gotten lost somewhere. And we can start to get hope, but then nothing happens. We're in our 4th year with Governor Kelly, and what has changed in criminal justice, so
she promised we wouldn't go to core civic. She promised we wouldn't go to private prisons.
Also they recently decided to take away one of the constitutional rights, and that's your right to a speedy trial. They're going to suspend their right to a speedy trial, so people are just left in jail until 2024
indefinitely.
Because they're behind. I still have to go to work in COVID. I still have to maintain. So what gave them the right to get behind? That take the judge to the prison. Do what you got to do to maintain business, like the rest of the world has had to do during this pandemic. They failed us in that area, and now they're going to punish more people for their failures once again.
And we must remember that at the polls. We must make lists. We must say, this person did this person did this, we have to start voting, and we have to start being responsible for who we put in charge of our loved ones. We must do that.
I agree. Julie, I know that you have had several people in your family that are incarcerated. How has that affected your family as a whole?
In several ways. It started when I was really young, and so I can remember lots of emotions with that. Being scared for them, anger for them, just a lot of confusion, watching family members fight about it, cry about it, not know how they financially support them. Growing up, having no respect for the system, my brothers and my other family members and stuff kind of following in the wrong footsteps because they didn't have any other choice and things. It's just been hard. The constant judgment, we can't talk about it, we can't go get counseling for it because it's our choice to love them, right? So therefore we're just stuck with the burden.
If I could teach anyone anything about sustaining a relationship, whether that be a mother-son relationship, or mother-daughter relationship, or a spousal relationship with the incarcerated, it's that I've had so many people ask me, well, why would you stay? Why would you leave? why would you leave somebody when they're at their lowest in life? Why would you
Right.
leave, you know? And so in my opinion, my life is no different than the life of a military spouse or someone who has a disability. You learn to accept life where it's at,
Right.
and you learn to maintain. It's just different than what society calls average. And by having empathy, we are actually stepping into the shoes of the other person, and we're feeling what they're going through and what got them where they're at. And I think that we have to have so much more empathy within the system to transform and to see a better outcome. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I really appreciate everybody being here. Does anyone have any final thoughts? Yes. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we go?
I would just like to say that as far as hope goes, that's our responsibility as families out here, you know, people
Yeah.
who have a little bit of say, people who have just a minute amount of control. We, you know, our voices can be heard. We can go to the media. We can write letters. We can hire attorneys. We must band together. Kansas is behind on that curve. We must band together, and we must get past the fear, and we have to be vigilant. We have to be bold. We must have hope that everything that we're enduring, everything that we're going through is going to make a difference in the lives of people who comes after us.
Well, and I do think that we are for sure the only hope they have. So we have to stand strong with them.
Yes.
And like I said, never give up. And I will forever be proud of my loved ones.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, did you have something to say?
Yes, I was just gonna say, like Audrey is talking about, that we are their hope, and we have to give them hope by continuing to strive and do what we're doing on the outside. And I was just gonna say, one of my family members, it's hard sometimes for them to have hope, like we see in everyone's family members, because when they have a situation or they want to fill out a Form 9, they're in a prison where the windows and the doors of the CEO or the team leader have pictures that say, I don't want to work today. Leave me alone. Go away. I don't want to talk to anybody.
Wow.
And so
Yes.
who's going to try to tackle that?
And I want to thank Dream Court Justice for
Yes.
sponsoring this Day of Empathy.
Yes.
And I know that we have to remember that people and power affect policy, and policy affects people. And yes,
Amen.
Julie, people, power, and policy. Thank you so much for tuning in and enjoying this Day of Empathy with us.